I did a thing. The hopes are gone and in come the Mavens, the latest and greatest stoppers from SRAM. The Maven Ultimate Expert Kit. Well, why are the hopes gone? So for the last 2 years since their release, I've been running the Hope Tech 4 V4 brakes. They started off pretty good. They were pretty finicky to bleed and took a few bleeds to get consistent, but we got there in the end. They had great power, awesome modulation, and a super nice and light lever feel, which ticks some of the boxes I'm looking for in my brakes. I like power, a nice lever feel, and consistency. The Hopes tick the power and the lever feel boxes, but not the consistency. They were tricky brakes to bleed perfectly, even following Hope's exact guide. The rear always felt a little bit more spongy than the front, and like both brakes kind of struggled to hold a fresh bleed feel for more than a couple weeks. So while I was in Canada, I was tossing up whether I should get new brakes before the summer came, and I was close to getting the Hayes Dominions, the A4s, whatever they are, and then these came out. So I thought I'd give them a go, mostly because of the power factor that these are meant to tick with ease. Now, I'm not really a SRAM fan, and it makes me a little bit queasy to think I'm going to be running a SRAM component. I especially didn't want the big red SRAM billboard of a caliper, and I prefer the look of the matching silver caliper, but these were the only colour that came with the Expert Kit, all for the same price as buying just the brakes themselves. I'm not going to go into detail about the different versions of these brakes that SRAM are offering because everyone else has done that already. But I did get the Expert Kit because it had rotors. 4 rotors that I could put straight on the bike, and then a couple spare ones. Out of 220, 2 200s and a 180. So I sold the 180 in Marketplace because I'm never going to use that. Put a 220 and a 180 on. And have a spare 200 sitting around as well. They also have spare brake pads as well, which I'm always chasing, so that's handy. I got these from Veta Mountain Bike Co, and they installed them as well. Now, I knew I wasn't going to love the lever feel. They're pretty similar to a Code RSC lever feel, which aren't my favourite, I'll be honest. The lever takes quite a bit of force to get going. Not ridiculous, but a little bit to get going. But from there, it's smooth sailing on a bearing. I gave up a nice lever feel in hopes that these are very powerful and very consistent. Much to SRAM's marketing team's disgust, I put the metal brake pads straight in, paired them with 220 and 200 rotors on the front and back respectively. I'm chasing as much power as I can get, and I really couldn't care less about organic brake pads and small rotors. So they're installed and I go to ride them on Veta Mountain. However, every ride I've done so far has been in the snow, and they've been noisy. Very noisy. But I thought that's kind of standard, and that thought was confirmed when I saw an Instagram story of Jesse Melamed riding in the snow the same day I was, and his big red Mavens were equally as noisy. Since then, however, the front brake has been silent, grabby, and extremely powerful, but the rear has continued to be honky. So I kept riding in hopes it would go away, but it didn't. So I sanded the pads, nothing. So I sanded the rotor, problem solved. This brings us to now, riding for the first time since fixing that honking and squeaking noise. Let's see how they go.
I'll see you guys at the end.
Fast forward a couple weeks and I've been riding them a lot more in some pretty mixed conditions. Very happy that the Mavens ticked the power box for me. I've ridden Shimano Saints out of the box and now the Hopes, and now these, and these are definitely the most powerful brake I've ridden, and probably just the most powerful brake I've felt on any bike. And I've felt most of, if not all, the high-end brakes going around these days. When riding these brakes, there's a fine line between modulating the rear wheel and locking it up into a skid, which isn't a bad thing. It just means there's a ton of accessible power and I need to learn how to use it more. Rolling around in the car park, the front brake power is immense and it can throw your weight straight over the front if you're not ready for it. On the trails and in combination with the rear brake, this translates to a brake that you always use like a small percentage of its accessible power. I've been riding as confidently as I ever have, knowing that I can stop on a dime if I need to. It has been so good knowing that the bite point is always going to be in the same place every single time you pull the lever, a feature I could never really perfect on my Shimanos and my Hopes. I do wish that the lever was easier to get moving, but I can't say I've noticed any extra fatigue on my hands than usual, even on longer 3 to 4 minute descents. I know some YouTube people have been going on about this, such as Dale Stone. He made a really interesting video on these brakes, which I'll link in the description, go check it out. I agree with him in some areas though, like I don't understand how SRAM have prototyped these brakes for a couple years across the downhill and EWS circuits, and then produced a brake that has a heavier lever feel than the Code RSCs. Especially with the hype and the praise for the TRP DHR Evos, the Hayes Dominions, and the Hope Tech 4s. All of these brakes receive praise for having a super nice and light lever feel. So not my favourite lever feel, but the consistency of them is what makes them bearable and I guess enjoyable, especially when this is the first time I've ever had very consistent brakes. With that, I don't think there's too much more to say at this point. They feel like an RSC but with way more power. From here, I'm going to keep riding them around the Vancouver area, and I'm especially excited to test them on some longer descents, especially the bike parks in a few months when they open up. So for now, I'm going to continue to give my thoughts on these brakes throughout future videos, so stay tuned for any upcoming videos. If I've missed anything, drop a comment or a question and I will get back to you. Apart from that, thanks for watching, have a good one.